YouTube. What's happening? It is Friday, June 26th at almost 10 a.m. And good morning, everybody. This is Rich from Virginia Beach. And we're going to go for a little ride. I've been doing some reading and got some interesting things to talk about. One of the things I've been reading, I just stumbled across this the other day. I was looking into my property taxes and whatnot, and I come across this document. It's called the Non-Resident Non-Person Position. It's put out by the Sovereignty Education and Defense Ministry. SEDM.org is who put this out. It's a 826-page PDF document. I got it online. I assume it's free. I found it. Didn't cost me anything. And I'm up to about page 464, and I'm about just slightly over halfway. And I'll tell you what, absolutely unbelievable what's in this document. I highly recommend reading that document. The more I read about law and about the maxims of law and Supreme Court, case law, because basically Supreme Court rulings become the precedent, and it takes a pretty extreme dissent or change or an overruling of a previous rule to really change how things operate. Once they pretty much set a precedent, meaning the Supreme Court of the United States Supreme Court, and a lot of times, sometimes even the states, Supreme Courts of the states, their rulings are very important. They carry a lot of precedent. It takes a whole lot to change a previous ruling on a similar matter. They very rarely do that. There are exceptions, but they're very few. But anyway, the way the codes and the statutes and the Code of Federal Regulations, the United States Code, the states' codes, the way they're all written is absolutely brilliant. The way they are written to deceive us, and that they have been doing that for such a long period of time, I gotta say, it's absolutely brilliant. There were some very brilliant minds that did this. And the more I read, the more amazed I am at the brilliance of how they, when we broke away from England, culminated with basically the end of the Revolutionary War in 1776, when we wrote our Declaration of Independence, severing our ties to the crown. Well, the crown called all their people subjects. Well, when we broke away from the crown and wrote our Constitution, we became, instead of subjects, we became citizens of the United States. The United States became a corporation. We become citizens of the corporation, which basically means subject. They did the same freaking thing. They did the same thing to us that we were trying to get away from in England for the same reasons. It's just like you can't get away from it. No matter how hard you try, you read the Constitution, there's a lot of fluttery words in there, and it makes you feel real proud and makes you feel free and makes you feel sovereign and all that stuff. Then comes along the statutes, the codes, the regulations, and the ordinances that are put in place by the municipalities, by the individual sovereign states, by the federal government, which is, rules the 10 square miles of D.C. When you start reading this, It's absolutely brilliant how they have obfuscated our rights. And they have. They've been very successful at it. Most people believe that when a police officer pulls them over, they're subject to their jurisdiction, right? That's what we all are taught. Do what the police say. Well, I kind of recommend doing what the police say if they threaten you with bodily harm. Of course, you don't want to be harmed. Nobody wants to be harmed. You know, they're standing there with guns, a lot of times more than one of them. And it's intimidating. But what they're enforcing is statutory statutes, which is civil. Every time you go to a traffic court, you're in there for a civil infraction. Civil infraction is a statute that they're throwing at you and holding you accountable to. The question is, are we truly subject to statutes? Well, that greatly depends on the individual themselves, the man, the woman, and how they conduct themselves. And it boils down to the fact that, are you a statutory citizen? Are you even a citizen? Or are you a non-resident, non-person? The only way that can be proven in a court of law is by the action that the man or woman has taken. If you put yourself and sign documents claiming that you are a resident, then yes, you can be considered subject to statutory statutes, which they call statutory law, which a statute is not a law. A statute is actually there written to regulate government and put limitations on the government. But they trick us to believe and put us in a domicile that is under federal, or what I'll call local jurisdiction, which in my case is the corporation that is called the City of Virginia Beach. Man, beautiful day. It's 80 degrees. It's 10 o'clock in the morning, Friday. Fairly low humidity. But anyway, yeah, the statutes are there to regulate the government. They trick us into believing or to copying to the fact that we are a municipal, we are under the statutes of the municipality, when in fact we're not. We're men and women that are not subject to those if we handle our affairs accordingly and stay in the private. Which, here's a good example. And all this is done by word trickery. It's mind games. It is deceit, actually. It is fraud in the factum, but they've been getting away with it because a lot of these words have dual meanings. And it depends on which context the word is used. For example, say for instance, you fill out a form. Say you fill out a form for your driver's license. And at the bottom it says place of residence. Well, you know, we all think our place of residence is what? Our address, right? Resident is a two-part word. The first part is res, which means it's Latin, it's a noun. It means a thing. The second part of the word is ident, which is short for identity. Resident, thing identified. Are you a thing? Hell no, you're not a thing. But if you conduct your business accordingly and you write your home address down or where your abode is as your residence, you're putting yourself smack dab in their jurisdiction. And they got you dead to rights. They could pull out your driver's license application or voter registration. I mean, all kinds of different things. Your tax forms, when you filed your 1040 forms last year. It's very, very deceitful how they do this. And whether or not you're subject to statutes all boils down to what you personally claim as your domicile. Most people believe that their domicile is the municipality or the local government where they have their residence. Well, if you have your residence in a local municipality, then you're subject to those statutes, which means traffic tickets, personal property tax, real estate tax, all the, you got to keep your yard mowed. You can't have leaves sticking out of your gutters. I mean, whatever they want to put on you. The trash man came and emptied your trash cans and a bunch of shit flew out and it's laying all over your front yard while you're at work and you don't even know it. And you get some neighborhood policy enforcer comes through and writes you an ordinance violation and threatens you with extortion, and they're going to pay somebody to come by and clean up your garbage and charge you all this amount. This is what happens when you're under their jurisdiction. If you maintain yourself outside of their jurisdiction, they can't do this to you. Like me, for example. I live in Virginia Beach, but I wasn't born in Virginia. I was born in Ohio. And then before I came to Virginia, I lived in California for 8 years. And I lived here for 30. But I also own land in North Carolina. So they have to prove to me that I personally am claiming Virginia Beach Municipality as my domicile. I don't have to claim Virginia Beach as my domicile. It's my choice. I was born in Ohio. I came here from California, and I own property in North Carolina. So how can they claim that this is my domicile? They can't. They can't prove this is my domicile because I have not stated that this is my domicile. So, yeah, very interesting how this works. Man, there's a lot of traffic. Friday, there's usually traffic, but this is a lot more than I've seen in a while. So anyway, if they're going to hit you up with a statute violation, which is any civil infraction, any civil infraction is a statute. It's a statutory violation. So, say I get a speeding ticket. That's a civil matter. That's a statute. I'm going to challenge their jurisdiction. I'm going to ask the judge, you got to prove jurisdiction. And the only thing that determines jurisdiction is where you claim your domicile is. They're going to try to tell you, oh, well, you lived here, or you did this, or you did that, so this is your domicile. You say, no, it ain't. And they're going to say, where is your domicile? I'll say, well, that's not the question. I questioned prove to me you have jurisdiction. And they're going to try to obfuscate and ask you a bunch of questions. You don't have to answer their questions. They have to answer your question. The question is jurisdiction. If they cannot prove that this is your domicile, then you're not under their jurisdiction. And they failed to prove their jurisdiction. And that's the method I'm going to take if I should ever get cited with a statute. Speeding ticket, reckless driving, disturbing the peace, whatever. There's thousands of them they could hit you with. Having a fire where you're not supposed to have a fire. You know, like if you got a bonfire in your backyard and somebody complains, they're going to come up and tell you to put it out in the municipality of Virginia Beach because they think they have authority. So hold them to account. You know, they're going to ask you a bunch of questions when you challenge jurisdiction. You don't have to answer. They're going to ask you, well, where is your domicile if it's not here? Well, that's not the point. Prove that you have it. Prove you have jurisdiction. How are you going to do that? Territory or geographical location and jurisdiction are two completely different things. And that's the big thing that the judges, the prosecutors, all of these people are going to say, well, you live in Virginia Beach. This happened in Virginia Beach. I've got jurisdiction. Well, no, they don't. And then you can move that the court dismiss this matter with prejudice and award me the damages for having to be here and explain this. They're going to have to if they can't prove jurisdiction. You don't have to prove where your domicile is. They have to prove where it is. They're the ones making the presumptions. A lot of people don't understand this. When you get into court, that's your court. You're a man or woman. Man or woman. I use the word man, meaning man and woman, just for simplicity. But I'm going to say man. That's how most of the laws, Constitution, all that's written. You know, it's written using the word man, but it means men and women both. They're the same. They're equal. But since I am a man, man wrote the laws and the codes. Man is not subject to them. The only law that man is subject to without him volunteering is criminal law. You cannot injure someone. You cannot damage their property or steal their property or do whatever. And if you do that, you should be subject to that law. If you damage someone, you injure them, you need to make it right with them. You need to fix it. Damn, got them all merging down into one lane here. Well, if you can't fix what you did wrong, if you don't make amends to that person, help him fix his property that you damaged, or if you injured him in some way, pay his medical bills, help him, work with him or her, I'd use them synonymously. If you can't make it right, then they have every right to take you to court and you be judged by a jury of your peers. That's how that works. If I injure somebody by mistake, by my negligence, I'm going to do whatever I can do to fix it. I'm going to try to make it right. If that's not good enough, then yeah, you can take me to court. I'll be judged by a jury of my peers, and I should be. That's why I try to be responsible. I'll tell you what, this whole freedom/sovereign movement, I don't like to use the word sovereign because they have obfuscated that word and gave it a bad name. Made it sound like, oh, you know, he's trying to break the law. You know, I've seen news articles, I've seen stuff on YouTube where they're interview like a sheriff or assistant or a deputy. Well, these sovereign citizens run around and think they don't have to follow the law and all this and that, and people believe it because they don't know what statutes, codes, regulation, and law is. So they believe what these people say. And these people are, in fact, either one, ignorant, or they're deliberately trying to deceive people. I think it's the latter. You don't get to be a sheriff, a sheriff deputy, or a police chief or assistant police chief without knowing a couple things. You know, you got to know some shit to be in one of those positions. I can't believe you're there because of complete ignorance. But maybe they are. Maybe that's why they're chosen for these positions. They actually believe what they're told instead of reading law. So I'm rambling once again, but man, I'm on a tear. I'm almost halfway through this document that I'm reading, and it has to do with different forms of citizenship. I'll tell you what, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. It's actually brilliant how we've been deceived. It's sad, but in the same sense, it's brilliant. It's absolutely, there's some smart people that are doing this. And it's going to take some people like myself with just a smidgen of common sense and a whole shitload of determination and a will to be free. I want to be free and not bound by the shackles of its deceit. They're extorting money from us. I'll tell you what, the taxes that they're taking from us is illegal. If you have your business in order and you want to maintain on the private side and you take steps to do that, and you don't work for the corporation, you don't live in the 10 square miles that is DC, and you don't do business in a federal territory, which is DC, Guam, the Northern Marianas, any of the territories of the United States, then you're not subject to a tax, income tax. I'm sorry. You look at Title 26, very craftily written. The Internal Revenue Code, very crafty, very, very crafty. Boil right down to it. If you're none of those people and you file a 1040, any form of 1040, 1040A, 1040, 1040EZ, you're committing perjury. And the IRS is committing fraud by accepting it. And if you do it via mail, then it's mail fraud, it's racketeering, it's extortion. It's part of the RICO Act. All kinds of stuff if you know what you're doing. This is lawful too. This is not unlawful to do these things. It's their own codes, their own regulation, and their own law. I say theirs because it's all written to regulate the corporations. It's not written to regulate private men and women. It's just not. If you read here's another good example. Person. I think I talked about this before. But there's like 20 different definitions of a person. Like you got a buddy, longtime friend of yours, right? You're walking down the street. You've been friends for 20 years. Your kids play together. They grew up together. You know, he's a good friend of yours. You know each other well. You know, they're spouses. You hang out. You know, you have a lot in common. You're walking down the street, you're talking to your buddy saying, hey, you know, look at that person over there. You know, look at the funny hat they're wearing or whatever. And they're like, yeah. You think it's a person, right? You think it's another human being. Look at the definition of person in the codes. Virginia Code, United States Code. I mean, the Internal Revenue Code. It's not what you think it is. It's a corporation. It's a fiduciary. It's a this. It's a that. It's all kinds of things. But it's not what you think it is. And they give you definitions. And a lot of times they'll use words words, and they will specifically not give you a definition for it. That's that's the epitome of obfuscation and deceit. This is straight up fraud. They'll use a word and won't even tell you what it means. You're left to guess. They can put whatever definition of that word they want because there's no definition. The judge, the attorney, prosecutor, law enforcement, they can all put whatever definition on that word they want. Is it fair? That depends. Is it? I don't know. What's fair? Man, beautiful day today. So, it's very important that you read. I watch a lot of YouTube, the high frequency radio, Yusuf El. I watch a lot of his videos. That guy makes a lot of sense. He talks a lot about, in fact, recently he talked about, roll this window up, it's kind of loud. I'm going to roll it up till it gets a little hot in here, and I'm going to roll them back down, because I hate using the AC unit. The AC unit just robs horsepower and takes down the efficiency. So, I'm going to go without. Anyway, he talks about the natural, natural law, or nature's law, which, everything has an equilibrium, and I certainly follow along with this. You can see it in nature. You have feminine and maximum, feminine and masculine, which are equals, but yet opposite. One is not more important than the other. They're both important, and they're symbiotic, and they depend on each other. There has to be an equilibrium. Same with plus and minus, up and down, dark and light, sun and moon, positive and negative, corrupt and righteous. I mean, it's natural law. Like, nature abhors a vacuum because it's an unbalance. If you take, say, a closed container and evacuate the air out of it, as soon as you open that container back up to the atmosphere is going to rush back in there. It wants equilibrium. Everything is a level plane. It always wants to find its equilibrium. And one of the things there's a plan here to basically tear our society apart. And you see it. I see it. You see it in the news. You see it in our TV programming. That all of the masculinity from males, they're trying to tear down. And they're trying to make the females more masculine. You notice that? You look at the commercials, you look at the TV shows, you look at movies, you look at all these things now, and Yusuf El pointed this out. I'm not taking credit for it. I'm repeating it because it makes so much sense, and I agree with it. That they're making all the females more masculine. They're in the dominant roles of power on TV and in commercials and in movies and even in politics. Look at a good example. A good example. Look at the city of Washington. I'm sorry, the city of Seattle in the state of Washington. It's got a female mayor. It's got a female assistant police chief. It's got a female police chief. It's got a whole bunch of females on city council, one of which let all these protesters into City Hall, unlocked the door and opened the door and let them in. They took over City Hall. They all went in there and started protesting. Basically took the joint over. I don't think it's part of... I'm not saying a female can't do things like that. They certainly can. But it's not the law of nature that that's their role to fulfill. They have just as important roles to fill in life as a man does. Just as important. Some might even say even more important. I think they're trying to fill roles of power that traditionally males have filled. And I think it's more suited for a male to do that. I don't think I'm being sexist in saying that. I think I'm just observing natural the way things are, the way things have been. They certainly may change, and they are changing when they're trying to, males can't sit there with their legs spread apart. Males can't explain things to female. They call it mansplaining. I mean, they're trying to put females in all these dominant roles when traditionally they were not there. Seattle is falling apart. Portland is falling apart. Philadelphia is falling apart. New York City is falling apart. I mean, I think we all have to fill our roles. We have to, you have to keep balance. Like, you certainly wouldn't want to put a fox in charge of the hen house, would you? Of course not. Why? It doesn't fall in the line of nature. In line with nature, I should say. It just doesn't fall in line with nature. You have your predators and you have your prey. Everything equals out. You don't want to put a prey in charge of the predators. It's not going to work. So, I forget where I was going. I'll tell you, I always get on these rants and I get off topic and I forget what I started off with. It's just like, I need to start writing stuff down. But when something triggers me, like, for example, go back to this male-female thing and how the powers that be are trying to get us so confused as to what our position is in life. You see these guys walking around being all feminized, and they're glorifying these feminine males. Guys are running around wearing these man buns, funky colored hair that women used to do. They got them all pulled up in a bun. That's not masculine. That's female. And I drank too much coffee this morning. That's a female trait. I can tell you right now, the law of attraction, females are not going to want to go with a feminine male. They just won't. That's not the way the law of attraction works. A real female will want to go with a masculine male. They'll be attracted. I mean, this is genetics. This is just the way it works. I mean, males primarily, are run on testosterone. We all have estrogen and testosterone. Both male and females do. But predominantly, our main as a male hormone is testosterone. That's what makes us aggressive. That's what makes us desire the female of our species, is the testosterone. That is the way nature works. Well, I guarantee you, society, or what they're pushing on us, is that, the males are being feminized, and they're making that, like they're glorifying that. But I'll tell you, that is not human nature. Females will not be attracted to a pussyfied male. They might like to hang out with them because they got a lot in common. They ain't going to want to have kids with them. They ain't going to want to marry them, because females want to be protected by a male. They want security. They might tell you they don't, because society doesn't agree with that. Society is pushing a different narrative. Doesn't fall in line with the natural law. Us men, we want to have women to protect. We want to have women that'll help us figure things out that we're not very good at figuring out. They hold us more closely in touch with our emotions. Because traditionally, I'm speaking of myself. Let me just talk of myself. I am of the nature that I don't tend to lend myself to showing my emotions a whole lot. Especially when I was younger and full of more testosterone than I am now. I mean, I was brewing with testosterone when I was younger. I was aggressive. I look back, I didn't know it at the time. But I was aggressive. I was assertive. I was strong. I had a lot of endurance. I could run for miles. In the military, I'd run for 8 or 9 miles. I mean, I was a beast. In special warfare in the Navy for 3 years. I absolutely loved it. I was on top of my game back then. Here comes another one of these people that just drive 10 miles an hour and it's a 25 zone. What the fuck are you doing? It's Friday. Bunch of people. I'm here later than I normally am. It's like 10:37 now. Sorry for the silence, but there's dunderheads walking all over the place, walking out in front of traffic. Got this clown in front of me. I can't even tell where he's from. He's got these obfuscated license plates. age. Man, this place is bumping. I'm usually here earlier than this. Before all the dumbasses come out, drive 5 miles an hour down the damn road. But yeah, I see these dudes walking around, they're pushing homosexuality, they're pushing gays, that's not natural. A society of dudes is not going to survive. They're doomed for failure. You don't have equilibrium. A society of females, the same thing, will die. Cannot survive. It's not natural. You can't procreate. You don't have balance. You don't have what I'll call harmony. You don't have it. I want to protect females. I enjoy their insight. I enjoy their ability to be in touch with their emotions. I think that's something I can't do very well. I'm not good at it. They've taught me over the years. I've been married twice. I'm currently divorced. Been divorced since well, technically I was divorced last year, but in reality, I've been single longer than that, because we split up for quite a while before I went and filed for divorce. Because, if something happens to me, we didn't even have a bad divorce. We didn't really argue and fight. She didn't respect herself. People walked all over her, and it was just hard for me to deal with. Her kids walked all over her. Her mom walked all over her. Walked all over me in the process, and I really couldn't stand that. I want somebody with a backbone. They don't have to be, this masculine female, but damn, stand up for yourself. Have some self-respect. It's hard for me to have respect for someone who don't respect themselves. It's another one of them, I guess, natural laws. That if you don't respect yourself, don't expect for anybody else to respect you either. That's just the way it works. What the fuck is going on here? Man, these people with orange and red hair. What the hell is going on? What in the hell is going on? What a beautiful day. I think I'm going to go down Dam Neck Boulevard and man, all kinds of hootie tooties. These people need to get some sun. Jesus. They're going to get their asses burned up out here. Yeah, I know I look like Richie from Boston puffing on this damn thing. I recommend everybody go get that 826 page document called Non-Resident, Non-Person Position, put out by, what the hell's it put out? Forget. Well, I told you earlier what it's put out by. I recommend it. I watched Richie from Boston yesterday had Dr. Andrew Kaufman on his channel. I'll tell you what, man, I really like both of those guys. Both of those guys are completely different. Richie is just straight Richie is just straight up. He just says it how he feels, which is awesome, because too many people don't do that. And Dr. Andrew Kaufman is so succinct, straightforward, very eloquently speaks, and has a great sense of humor. And like Richie said, he's always smiling. He always, has a positive attitude during all this. The doctor lost his job in New York State. He was working in New York State as a psychiatrist, and he wouldn't wear a mask. He refused to wear a mask because he took the stance that it doesn't protect you, it actually harms you. So they let him go, and he left. Instead of wearing a mask and going against his principles, he gave up his job. Most people don't have the balls to do that. That takes conviction. That takes a lot of conviction, and I really admire someone like that. And I tell you, that's what made me to decide to just say fuck it and not go back to the workforce. I'm retired now. I'm not going back to work. I'm fortunate. I've saved money. Over the last 11 years, I saved 25% of my income, put it in a 401k. I was fortunate to be able to do that. I suffered. I didn't have a lot of the things I wanted to have while I did that. But I wanted to retire one day. It's a little sooner than I expected. But hey, I got laid off when I was 55. I just turned 56 right after I got laid off. And, I decided, with all this madness, I'm done. I called Fidelity, the people that manage my 401k. I got enough in there to comfortably get me to Social Security. And if I sell my house, which I'm in the works of getting everything fixed up now, so when I do decide to sell, I'm just kind of, I'm getting ready to get it painted. I just did all the trim, had it wrapped, got new gutters, get new shutters put on, putting some new carpet in. I'm just gonna fix it up, so when I'm ready to pull that plug, it's not gonna be a ton of work. And I'm gonna build my house in North Carolina with the profits from this house, and not even have a mortgage. You hear that? You know what that was? I'm close to Oceana Naval Air Station. And that was an F-18 Super Hornet. I pity the people that live around here. Those damn things are loud as shit. But I used to say, yeah, that's the sound of freedom, and I'm like, yeah, that's our military. I retired 13 years ago. I was all about the military. So I started looking around and realized those people aren't The military is not fighting for we the people, to benefit we the people. You know who the military are fighting for? They benefit the bankers. They benefit the government personally. The bankers are the ones that pull the string on all the politicians, big corporations, the bankers. They're the ones that control the corporation of the United States of America. Or should I say the United States of America Incorporated. U.S. Inc. Because it's a for-profit corporation. And they are making a ton of profit. I talked about, I think I posted this video. I'm not sure. I made a video. I'm not sure if I posted it. About what we did to the country of Libya. Sovereign country on the continent of Africa. The northern tip of Africa. Most African countries are just, you know, they've been looted, they've been pilfered. Corrupt governments, you know, siphon the funds off, don't spread it to the people, personally enrich themselves. I mean, it's just, Africa for one reason or another has just been a shit show. But Libya, on the other hand, really wasn't. And I didn't know this. And I even participated in bombing Gaddafi back in '86 under Ronald Reagan when we crossed their line of death and bombed them. It was supposedly over there downing TWA Flight 800 over Lockerbie, Scotland due to terrorism. Come to find out, 20 so odd years later, that's not what happened at all. That's not even close to what happened. What happened was there was a policy put in place after World War II. Since we were one of the victors of World War II, we got to establish the rules, because World War II basically, for the most part, the whole damn world was at war. And since us, United Kingdom, or England, and Russia, the three of us collectively were the victors of World War II. So we got to divvy shit up the way we wanted that would be most advantageous to us. So we put in place a doctrine. I think it was Bretton Woods. Don't get me wrong, don't get it twisted, but there was a doctrine put in place that all oil will be sold for the U.S. dollar. Who's that going to benefit? The people of the United States that use the U.S. dollar. So Gaddafi was like, screw you, man. I'm tired of this shit. I'm going to sell my oil for my own, which was a dinar, for my own benefit. It's my oil, why shouldn't I benefit? Which he's right. Why shouldn't he? He's drilling oil out of his own country and selling it to the international market. Why shouldn't he sell it for his own currency? Nope, United States, being the victor of World War II, which ended in 1945, still have this draconian measure in place. Then no, Gaddafi, you can't sell your oil for your own currency. What the hell do you think we're doing? Remember, we won World War II. Remember, 40 years ago, we won World War II. Can't sell it for the dinar. So we went in and literally kicked his ass. I was on the USS Enterprise. We went over and we flew sorties and we bombed in Tripoli. We bombed one of his residents. We killed and injured some of his family members. We didn't get him on purpose because we didn't want to take him out. We just wanted to scare the living shit out of him. No, you go back to selling your oil for our currency, pal. Don't try to act like an independent country all on your own. You got to listen to us. You know, it worked. It scared the living bejesus out of him. He kept his mouth shut for 30 years. Then he got, you know, what he did, he marshaled a campaign, which someone coined the phrase greening the desert. I don't know if it was him. I don't know who it was that coined that phrase, but they did. And this dude was drilling and setting these aqueducts. Man, I got to turn on the damn AC. Figure out how to work this. There we go. Sync. All right, but so anyway, so yeah, so he started greening the desert. I mean, you know, Africa. I mean, it's a freaking desert, and he's north. There's a lot of sand, you know. There's not a lot of habitable, you know, where you can grow stuff. So what he did is he put in these great big gigantic aqueducts. I still don't have this right. AC. There we go. So he put in these big, huge aqueducts, and he was funneling water out to the desert, and he was giving his people, the Libyan people, he was giving them huge swaths of land out in what used to be one time desert, and now there's water available so they can grow things. He would give them a big chunk of land, give them some money to get started, give them a bunch of seeds, give them a couple animals to get going, and encourage them to be part of the agrarian society so they can be more self-sufficient. Because one of the big imports of Libya was produce. So they had money to import it, but if people have put sanctions on them all the time and they can't import produce, they're going to freaking starve. So he was doing this, and it was absolutely amazing what he was doing. You can actually see the results of this from satellite, or what they call satellites, from aerial imagery, where the desert was actually greening up. It wasn't a big deal for a long time. You know, this is a big national project. He invested billions of dollars in. And Libya was a fairly wealthy nation, but the only resource they had really was oil and their people, you know, for labor. So they have to diversify and become more self-sufficient, which is cool. So they're going to start growing their own food, which is awesome. Everybody should do that. So that was going on fine. Everything was fine. And he had a big meeting with, you know, he's a member of OPEC, oil producing, exporting companies, which is OPEC. And they had a big meeting, all the big Arab people. And he introduced to them a gold-backed dinar, because Libya had a lot of gold. Their currency was actually backed by gold, which the bankers didn't like, because the international bankers couldn't go in there and establish their scheme of fractional reserve banking, because all their dinar were backed by gold. So once he started doing that, he pissed off the bankers. So back, I forget when it was, 2012, it was back when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. Back in 11 or 12 or whatever, they sent their ISIS minions in there and overthrew Gaddafi and had him brutally tortured and murdered. All because he was gone to the gold dinar. And the bankers couldn't profit from it. So they sent in ISIS, had him killed, and now that place is a shithole, has been a shithole. There's been a power vacuum there ever since, and it will never be the same. It will never be the same, and we did it. And that supposedly is spreading democracy Yeah. Democracy is a shit show. So yeah, I guess we are spreading democracy. So we're not a democracy either, by the way. We're supposed to be a constitutional republic. How much of that shit do we see? I don't see a whole lot of it. I don't see a whole lot of it at all. But that's what we're supposed to be. We're quite far from it. We need to go back to it. And the only way we can go back to that is if every one of us understands that we are an individual, sovereign citizen. I don't care what bad words they give it. It's actually in the codes and the doctrines. And state police just went whizzing by at about 85 miles an hour. Know that you are private. Stay in the private. Do not contract with the government. Do not make yourself liable and subject to the statutes, codes, regulations, and ordinances that you should not be if you are private, and maintain that. Turn in your driver's license. Understand you do not need a license to exercise a constitutionally recognized right. Recognized as unalienable. It can't be taken. It wasn't given by man. It can't be taken by man. It was given by God, the Creator. Man can't take something which was given by God. It just can't. It can't happen in the law of nature. Man-made government. Man is not subject to government. Man is subject to criminal law, but man is not subject to government unless you say you are subject to government. By the way, you fill out various forms and documents. Be careful. Understand everything you sign and the significance of the wording. Because if you don't, you're going to be locked in servitude for a long time. And every time they want to throw a statute at you, they got you. You contracted with the government. You are now a serf. You are a serf of the whim of the government instead of the government being a serf of the whim to us, the people. Know where you're at. Know who your authority is. It's the one above, the one who created you. The authority is not man. Man didn't create you. God did. So you have to know the hierarchy and the way of things. If you don't, you're subject to serfdom. Anyway, it's been over an hour, man. I've been talking and talking. I've had 2 cups of coffee this morning. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling powerful. I'm feeling masculine. I'm feeling like awesome because I'm powered with knowledge. With knowledge is power. But anyway, I'm going to go. Treat people with respect. Each man and woman put on this earth was created by God, not by you. You are not their judge. Treat them with respect, kindness. If they don't understand and they ask for help, help them. If they don't ask you for help and you throw a couple hints out there and they're not taking the bait, leave them alone. Throw a couple little pearls out there to them and give them some food for thought. Let them dwell it. You know, a lot of people, it took me a long time to start understanding this stuff. It took me even longer to put some of it into practice. But I put a lot of it into practice. And I love it. I thirst, I quest for more knowledge to break the chains of bondage. And only knowledge will do it. Only knowledge will ever do that. So read, study. High frequency radio. I'm talking about YouTube channels. Richie from Boston. High frequency radio. Old Dog New Tricks. His Advocates. These are just ones I listen to. I don't agree with everything. I certainly don't agree with everything that certain people say. But I use my own discernment. God gave me a brain for a reason. I figure it's to use it. Maybe it's for something else. That's what I think. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm using it and I'm enjoying it. I am absolutely. If you have an unbreaking desire for freedom, and now let me throw this caveat in there, and this is often overlooked. I made a video yesterday. It turned out like crap, so I deleted it. I never posted it. But I had a pretty good little thing about responsibility. A lot of people are not comfortable with taking responsibility for their own actions. That's okay, I get that. I totally get that, I understand. We've been indoctrinated. They want to be serfdoms. They want to pay their taxes. They want to be subject to all the federal and local, rules, regulations. They want to do that. That's okay, let them do that. Let them do that. If they don't want to be responsible for their own actions, then let them do that. I'm saying, like myself, I have become much more responsible since I have gained more freedom. And the more freedom you have, the bigger the obligation to be responsible becomes. That's very, very important. You cannot hurt others. Don't do these things. I'm going to pull in here to Glory's Bakery and get something to eat. I'm absolutely starving. But anyway, folks, I'm going to let you go. Be good to everyone. And peace!